again, the market has ended in red. There's not been a single day in the market where we've ended the session in green, right? Now, that should not raise a lot of questions because we've seen that the market correct since September 2024. So that's been a good 4 to 5 months since the time we've seen the market correct, right? Now, for most people who've entered either after COVID or in the last couple of years, right, they might have not seen such a deep correction, right? But very honestly, this correction is very normal, and we've seen a deeper correction as well. So the last correction, which a deep correction, which we saw was in the year 2020, in the month of March, right? I don't think anyone can forget that month or date, because that is when all of us were impacted by COVID, and the market corrected by close to 40%, right? And you guys have seen as to how the last 4 years have been, last 4 to 5 years have been since COVID, right? People have made a lot of money. Now, to that point, people have made money not because of COVID, but because of starting the investments during the time the markets were falling. So this just goes to say that you make money when the markets are falling, not when the markets are rising, right? And there's a very famous quote by Warren Buffett. He keeps repeating that, right? That you should be greedy when the market is fearful and be fearful when the markets are greedy, right? Sorry, I'll rephrase it. Be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy, right? So having said that, right, this is a very normal phenomenon. We also recently shared a video by Peter Lynch, right, where he mentioned that in the last 93 years, right, and that's a pretty big record, right? In the last 93 years, the markets on an average have corrected by more than 10 percentage for the last 50 times, right? So on an average, every 2 years, the markets can correct by 10 percentage. So we all have seen that. So this is not the first time that we've seen markets have corrected by more than 10 percentage for more than 50 times, right? Now, markets can correct even further, right? They can fall further by 25 percentage as well, and that has happened 25 times. So every 6 years, once in every 6 years, on an average, the market can fall or correct by 25 percentage as well. So that doesn't mean that, okay, if the market has fallen by 13 percentage at this point in time, it can further fall by 15 or 20 or 25 percentage. But I'm just trying to make everyone comfortable with the fact that corrections are a part and parcel of investing in the market, right? Now, having said that, we have to ride both the good and the bad aspects of the market as well, right? Now, coming to sharing some of the data, we already went through the data wherein we mentioned that the last 7 days have been in the red. Prior to that, or during the time of the union budget, right, there was some good news in the market, right, wherein the RBI had infused close to 60,000 crores, because they clearly understand that there's a lot of liquidity in the market, and that would really support some of the Indian banks. At the same time, that would also support the market, and which we did see. The five questions that we had, right? So I believe there was one question which says, "My portfolio is in the red for the past few months. Is this okay?" Yeah, it's completely normal, right? So now, again, it's a very simple thing that I tell people, right? That you have to always have a benchmark, right? So in large cap, we have Nifty 50 as a benchmark, right? So now, if you have a fund which is not been outperforming the benchmark, right, then that is a concern for you, right? Now, if the market had done a 12 percentage last year and you've made only a 8 percentage, right, from the fund that you are investing in, then that is a concern for you. Only then I would suggest that we have a discussion, we rebalance your portfolio, or we switch to a different scheme. But if you look at the overall market, and if you feel like you are in line with the benchmark, or you are in line with the entire market, right, then I don't think there's any concern for anyone to have, right? If the markets are falling, obviously the portfolio is going to be in the red, right? And there's one more thing that you need to understand, right? That since when have you started investing? If you started investing for the last 3 or 5 years, right, your portfolio would be affected, but you wouldn't see your gains be in the red. You would still see a considerable growth in your portfolio, right? So it's all with the recent investments. I would suggest in the last 4 months, 6 months, or in the last one year that you would have done, that would majority be in the red, but your overall portfolio should still be in the green. If you are someone who's been investing for a while now, that what is the purpose of you buying this gold? Right now, when you talk about buying gold to an Indian family, right, most of them are accumulating or consolidating gold for weddings, right? Either to
Right.
give it as a gift or to make it as jewelry, right? So that is the time when people look forward to it, right? Now, if someone had not done any of this, and if someone had to go purchase everything right now, you see gold is at an all-time high, right? So then
Correct.
obviously it
Hmm.
would have made sense to accumulate that gold in the past, right? Plan it well in advance rather than a year or 2 years before the wedding, right? So having said that, it is very important to understand what the purpose of purchasing gold is,
Right.
right?
Right.
There are a couple of other things as well. Like, if it is consumption, then yeah, definitely. Like the previous example that I mentioned, right? You should accumulate gold coins. You should accumulate probably gold bars as well, right? This is something that you can keep purchasing on and off. Now, if you're looking from an investment perspective, 100% the investment has to be in digital gold, has to be in gold ETF, or it has to be in the form of SGBs, right?
Okay.
Having said that, SGBs is something which has been discontinued by the government. So something which started in 2015 and close to 45,000 crore, if I'm not wrong, was issued from 2015 until 2024, because it's been exactly a year now since the last tranche of gold was issued. So now they've completely discontinued this because the cost of borrowing is very, very high in the case of gold, right? So
Okay.
if it is for investment purpose, it has to be in either three of these ways. If it is for consumption, then I would suggest that you purchase gold coins, gold
So
bars, because there is no
physically. Okay.
compounding. Yeah,
Hmm.
physical, right?
So
There's no
because the
compounding in
problem
physical.
is, yeah,
Hmm.
the orthodox thinking here is that they have absolutely no idea about what digital gold is, and they don't
True.
even believe in digital gold, and they are like
Right.
very skeptical, because
Right.
they think like as long as it's not in my hand, it's not with me.
In
So
hand.
to
True.
convince the parents, it's
Hmm.
difficult about digital gold. Yeah, but I think we have some little bit going
Digital.
on with you.
Yeah. So
There
what
is
what I would
jar. I don't know.
suggest
You
is, right,
you,
like,
you call.
and
There is a
hmm,
this app called Jar, right?
the gold jar
Is
as
it
well. Correct.
digital?
Yes. Yes.
Is
Correct.
that digital gold? Is that
Yes,
what you
that is
call digital?
digital.
Okay.
That is digital gold. Yeah, that is digital gold as well. So digital gold is a scheme such as JAR, or there are also mutual funds which invest in gold, right? So again, I'm not recommending an AMC, but I'm just giving an example that there's Nippon India Gold Scheme as well. So basically, they only track gold. That is the only asset that you're investing in, right? It doesn't have any exposure in equity. It doesn't have exposure into debt as well, right? So that is a digital gold as well, right? So that is something that we've been suggesting, because especially people, as I mentioned, they've had to wait for close to a year for the tranche of gold to come, to be disappointed that there will be no more issuance in the gold market of SGBs, right? So now we are making people comfortable with the idea to invest in a multi-asset scheme which has exposure to gold, equity, and debt. But if they're focused completely on a commodity like gold, then there is a scheme, Nippon India, like, again, as I mentioned, this is just an example. This is a scheme which we suggest to them as well, where they can track the price of gold, right? And to people, right, like, if you mentioned, right, being orthodox, so that's normal, right? And I would suggest that we give them time, or we start with a small amount of investment for them to get comfortable. But the one thing that I would really tell them, which is a convincing point, is that when you have raw gold, right, there's always two issues that I see. One is the issue of theft, right? And the other thing is having to keep it in the locker, where again you have to incur a lot of charges to maintain that locker, and on and off, right? So now having that, in the case of a gold ETF or an SGB or a digital gold, right, there is no risk or theft of any sort, right? And gold is something which people are comfortable with. That is something which they understand, right? On an average, if you can make a 12, not a 12, a 9 to 10% return on a 10-year basis, right? I think it is definitely a very good asset to keep as hedge. The second question that we had is, the rupee is among the weakest currencies in South Asia. Is there a comeback from this? So again, this is a very macro factor, right? And we are no finance ministers to help answer this question as to how this is going to happen. There was one point which I would reflect, right? That India has very positive ties with the US, right? Like recently, our Prime Minister has done a trip to the US as well, wherein they did confirm with Donald Trump, who's the president, right, of the United States, that they will be purchasing more oil from the US, right? Now, obviously, India has to bend their knee if they have to manage good ties, and this will in the long run definitely benefit us. But in the past, especially during the Russia-Ukraine crisis, right, you guys would have noticed that most countries, most European countries had had cut their ties with Russia. But at that point in time, India started purchasing oil from Russia at a discounted price. And at that point in time, we didn't have to buy anything in US dollars. We had to buy in our local currency, right? So that was a very good advantage which we had back then, right? Now, again, as I said, right, these are macro factors. We have very little control over this, right? But in case if an individual is so worried, especially, and this is a concern which most people, most NRIs have, especially those living in the Southeast or people living in Middle East or people in the US, Canada, right? This is a concern which they have that, they're earning in dollars, and they see that, they would want to keep that kind of money in dollars, right? So to the point that we mentioned in the past, right? That US is a good place where you can park some of your assets as well. For you to see a good 4% appreciation in your currency, at the same time make an average return of between 15 to 17%. Now, again, this can vary from time to time, but this would really help, to have or maintain a good allocation when you have to maintain your investments in dollars. So the question is, what do you suggest that I do during this market condition, right? So I believe that people fall under three categories at this point in time. One is people who are underinvested, right? So if you're underinvested, you have some capital right now, definitely a good time to build positions, right? So that is something that you should definitely consider, because the market has corrected by a good 13%. So if you're buying anything right now, you're buying it at a discount, right? Uh, and then there will be second type of people who have been investing regularly through either regular lump sum investments, through regular SIPs, right? So continue doing that, right? You will make money in a falling market. You will not make money in a rising market, right? This is not the time to stop your SIPs. This is not the time to stop your investments. Please continue your investments. If you have heard someone on YouTube tell you that, stop your SIPs, please do not listen to that, right? And the third would be people who are over invested, right? And if you're over invested in equities, right, I understand that, your allocation or your exposure is highly in equity, which is very, very volatile, so that might give you a lot of anxiety. But understand that you have been investing for a longer period of time, right? So you've also seen the good aspects as well, right? But since this is something which you cannot control, anxiety is something which you cannot control, market is something which you cannot control, right? Diversifying this portfolio into a fixed income product, right? Be it something allocation in equity, right? It definitely makes sense for us to diversify it into a fixed income product, right? What fixed income will help right now is it'll calm down your nerves, because you will always see this particular portfolio in the green, right? That is the advantage of knowing how much of a fixed return that you are going to make, right? So allocating that, getting a regular income from that, that is always going to help you hedge your portfolio as well. So this is for someone who has over allocation, right? And for someone starting off, yeah, as I said, right, like don't really worry, right? Like this is not the first time the market has corrected. We've seen this a lot of times in the last 100 years. We haven't personally seen it, but our ancestors would have seen it. But this should just bring more confidence that, when we go back to a previous all-time high, right, we would have made a very decent and a simple 13 to 15% return without having to take a lot of risk.